I walked up to work one day and there were 30 people sitting outside in front of my store. Why? Why were they sitting outside? And why were they there at 7 o'clock in the morning? It happened to be iPhone launch day. The man sitting in the front of the line had been there since the night before. Consumers of iPhones have repeatedly stood in line for their phones on iPhone launch day every year since the iPhone has come out. That is why I believe that consumers who purchase Apple products with the Apple operating system are more satisfied with their phones overall. I'm going to prove that this is true by explaining the ease of use of the Apple operating system, the Apple App Store, and the security that comes with Apple. First, we're going to start with the ease of use. The ease of use contributes to the success of the Apple operating system because of its simplistic design. Business.com reported that the interface is crisp and clean, and users rarely struggle to locate apps. This means that because the apps are all the same size and you get to organize them the way that you want them to, that you're going to know where those apps are, creating a better experience for the user overall. Also, because of the ease of use, there are no alternative user interfaces. Now that might seem a little more complicated, but I'll break it down. Android is offered on various phones that are made by various manufacturers. So LG, Samsung, they all make Android operating devices. Now Android itself creates an interface for the phone, and then Samsung and LG and all of the other companies, they add their own interfaces on top of it, making it even more complicated and difficult to move from one Android phone to another and having a seamless experience. Apple, Digital Trends in 2016 stated that every Android phone from each manufacturer looks and works differently because each company puts a different user interface on top. All iPhones come from Apple, so the interface is exactly the same no matter if you have an iPhone 5, an iPhone 6, or the newest iPhone 7. Now that we understand that the Apple operating system is easy to use, we're going to move on to the Apple App Store. The Apple App Store also helps with the Apple iOS being more successful with its exclusivity and compatibility. Digital Trends in 2016 made a few good points when comparing Android, the Windows operating system, and also the Apple iOS. They stated that iOS has been a more lucrative platform for developers and easier to develop for, so there has been a tendency for new apps to appear there first. And even though Android has a higher quantity of free apps, most of the best gaming apps end up on iOS and sometimes never actually reach the Android operating system. With compatibility, there's apps on the Apple iOS called like iMessage, FaceTime, the iPhone just phone calling that are compatible on all different Apple operating systems. So you've got the Watch iOS that you can actually make phone calls and text from. You have the Mac iOS or Mac OS, which you can FaceTime, message, call people on through Wi-Fi, along with the actual iOS that you can do all those with. And the apps on each one of those is the same looking. So it's compatible, and you know when you go on a Mac OS, if you see the message app at the bottom of the screen, you know it's going to be for iMessage. So now we understand that the App Store also helps with the success of the Apple operating system. We're going to move on to the last point, which is the security that comes with having an Apple device. Apple's commitment to privacy and security for its users is a major instrument in its continued success. Some of the known aspects is Apple's reputation for no viruses and the fingerprint reader, which is what they call as a Touch ID. The biggest contribution is that updates are pushed to phones more efficiently than any other operating device. The execution of updates on the user level is significantly higher than their Android counterparts. Forbes in 2016 states that Google's monthly update of the Android install base shows a 0.7% of devices recently accessing the Google Play Store are running a variant of Marshmallow, which is the current Android, would be iPhone, the iOS 7, or iOS 10, which is the current one for Apple. Over 99% are running older versions, which do not have the features that they want. Forbes also mentioned that if we compare that to Apple's updates of iOS, The adoption rates of the previous update, which is iOS 9, over a similar period to Android's availability starting in early November 2015, iOS 9 variants reached 75% of devices accessing the Apple App Store. Apple updated Android significantly. Because of the inconsistency on Android, they simply cannot compare when it comes to security, because from the same Forbes research, they state from a security point of view, from patching bugs and exploits to giving users new features and useful extras, Android falls far behind Apple in its ability and keeps users safe. And there's no sign that Marshmallow or recent security scares have helped improve the issue for users. The last security benefit is that the war with the FBI that Apple had. The FBI asked Apple to give them access into a terrorist phone, and Apple declined. CNBC in 2016 reported that Apple CEO Tim Cook called the order chilling, said that it would require writing new software that would be a master key, capable of opening hundreds of millions of locks. Cook's argument was that the FBI could access this phone and nothing would stop them from doing it to many. So Apple has the users' wants in mind and their privacy as their priority. Now that we understand that the Apple operating system is easier to use, that the Apple App Store is compatible and has exclusivity, and that the security that Apple has for the priority of security that Apple has for its users, it can be confirmed that Apple is a superior operating system to any others. Thank you.
What was the time on that?
Time goes quickly, very fast. All right, Samantha, let's talk about some of the things that are really solid. I like the visualization that you have at the beginning to get our attention. You have a very clear statement of what the proposition is. In the body of the speech, it's pretty well organized. Your labeling and your numerical signposts are fine. You explain most of the concepts in the body of the speech, and you also come across as being very credible because you talk to us directly, and you usually always provide some kind of supporting material for the points that you're making, which I appreciated. On the supporting material, I thought you had expert testimony well covered. You had some good statistical information, a couple of examples. Usually you provide sources for the information, especially for the testimony. Some of the examples could have used a little bit of a source citation, but that's a minor quibble on that particular point. My main criticism has to do with the secondary points, both the preview and in the body of the speech. They're not claims. They're just labels that you have. Ease of use, Apple, App Store, security. You need a claim. You need a declarative statement on those things. So you want to say the Apple iOS is easier for people to use than competing systems. That's your, declarative sentence. The Apple App Store provides a more satisfying set of apps than Google Play or whatever it happens to be that you're comparing it to. And the security of Apple products is superior or greater than you have on the others. So, it's organized. I know what the structure is, but they ought to be declarative statements. That's the main quibble that I have with your speech. Otherwise, it was easy to follow, well structured, good information, and I thought it was delivered very nicely as well. I like the summary too.